Son of a goose swims, there was a time in my life when I started to have a crush on all the mysterious stories, especially the ones that are told as if they really happened. I was fascinated by them. Suggest me a YouTube thumbnail idea for the title. Maybe because my father was one of the most famous writers and journalists specialized in the news of accidents and crimes. Besides his interest in research and writing about the most mysterious and the most serious crimes and accidents, whether local or foreign. After that, I received the opinion from him. Every now and then, I used to go back to his articles and articles that he published, most of them. I also used to go back to the rest of the articles that I didn't have time to finish publishing. And I looked at them, but I found out that my father, in the last period, was writing articles in order to be a content of a book that will be revised, or a material to prepare a radio program. He was still trying to write with a pen and a paper before writing with a pen. But the strange thing is that he used to put these articles in a box in his office. And this is what I found out by chance after I was arranging the place. And the title of the article was Mysterious Accidents. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. I am Olivert James, and this is Narrator program. A new episode is full of real events. And this episode is a little bit long. And there are some events that I won't tell you by mistake. But they are events that someone needs to be very aware of so as not to get confused. So if you don't want to get confused, pay attention. The story was written by Olivert James. And it is possible that it is the beginning of a new series. We will start it with this story. And this doesn't mean that this story is the first part. But I am saying a series. A series that many of you will ask for after we finish this file in our hands. So we don't want to waste too much time. Let's see what is the file whose title is Mysterious Accidents. And who is speaking? And who is his father? We will know all of this in a moment. The file was a series of articles. Some of them I read before, and some of them I didn't read. I didn't know anything about it. I quickly read them, and then I remembered that I always ask myself more than one important question. Are there really events and crimes that don't have an explanation or an end? I mean, is there really something called a complete crime? Or this crime has a purpose, and it is said that it is complete because the truth is not known? Are there really mysterious events that lead to seemingly incomprehensible endings, but there is a shocking truth behind it, so it is better that the announcement is not made and it is put under the umbrella of the unknown actor, or the correct explanation about the event is not reached? And the most dangerous question is there another imposter other than humans who can commit crimes or mysterious actions? Is there an event that happens because of magic and deeds and its details are hidden? In the case of Muhera incident, I found things that brought me closer or answered my questions. What caught my attention was that these articles were either crimes that were not written about at all, or the writing in them was not created because of the orders to stop publishing them. And from all the titles I counted when I opened the file for the first time, a title for a strange event that I started with happened. It happened, that time stopped, and the place no longer existed, and the beginning of the writing in it was in line with my father, and it said, "You will surely come a time and believe things you deny, and then you will deny everything you believed, and then you will be torn between the two and lose the truth you will find. Hypocrisy is your evidence and your denial of the truth, and at times it will be your only salvation so that you can continue in life, and you will know that the devil or the devils are able to incarnate in the form of humans, or maybe what we think they are humans, they are not humans at all." This is what I learned from the story of the disappearance of Adele Fahmy's family. General diplomacy. The names, places and dates have been changed in most of the stories based on the specificity of the subject itself, according to what was published in it. But everything you will hear or read happened indeed. This was the introduction on the first page, and under it is the signature of the author, Shaker Abbas. May his father rest in peace. And what is clear now is that it was going to be a radio show, and the first story started. The incident happened in the 90s, the story of Adele Fahmy's family, a well-known antique dealer, who one day, without any introduction, his 3 children disappeared from the heart of his house in a strange incident of that time. The police met at 11 a.m. with the disappearance of Akram, Maram and Karam Adele Fahmy. They disappeared from their house when Farida Farhat, the mother, pretended to wake them up to go to school, but she was surprised that he went to sleep on her, and of course their father turned the world upside down and reported what he knew, and he came to our department and dealt with the incident, and of course we did not wait for the procedures to take their normal course and to pass 24 hours, and I raid. Omer Zidane went straight to the address of the house to start the first steps of the investigation about the truth of the incident and collect some information. I knocked on the door and my mother opened it, and the father appeared. "Good morning, Raid Omer Zidane. I am calling you to arrest him. Please come in." Adele told me that he was looking for Farida, and I entered the apartment without knowing what happened, so I told my father, who was apparently more coherent, but from the amount of cigarettes in the drawer I noticed the natural tension for anyone, and I asked him directly, "Adele B, I know that the situation is difficult, but can you tell me what exactly happened?" The cigarette that was ending in his hand came out again while he was shaking his head, and as soon as he started talking, his wife Farida woke up crying, so I told her to excuse me if you stay with us because I need an explanation about something I will hear. She sat without saying anything, and she was like a collapsed, or Adele had his cigarette before he started talking, and I told her, "It's a stupid request if you excuse me, but can one of the workers here make me a cup of coffee?" They looked at each other, but Farida came back and told me, "We only have one worker at home and she hasn't been here since yesterday. She went to her country. I didn't want to drink coffee, and this is not a request to be made in a situation like this, but I needed everyone to be present in front of me, so I will hear her words for the first time. And when people look at them with questions and answers, they give you hints, even if they are not very clear, but they direct you even in a simple way." I told them there is no problem. What happened? Nothing different happened than what happens every day. The kids go to their room at 11 at night to sleep for school, and this is what happened yesterday. We were watching TV, it was time to sleep. So I went to their room and the lady woke them up because Samira wasn't there, and then she came to my room and told me that the kids are not allowed in the apartment, and I asked her some more questions after I found out that everything here is strange. The house they live in is a house of 2 floors, ground floor and the first floor. The ground floor has an apartment with half the area of the apartment, which is a big area, not a small one. It is a quiet and relatively new residential area. There are no signs of violence in the apartment. Even the mother said that when she didn't find them in their room, she quickly opened the apartment door. Maybe they went downstairs for any reason, but she found that the door of their apartment, which they live in, is closed from the inside, as they do every day before going to sleep. This means that the kids didn't go out by themselves, nor did they go out in general. They would have been locked behind them if they went out from here, and they didn't go out from the door nor from the window for the same reason. And what's wrong with them? They were evaporated. Akram, Maryam, and Karam, 10 years, 9 years, 8 years. These were their ages in order. They are young. Yes, but if someone tried to kidnap them, they were supposed to scream, and their room is next to the father's room and the mother's room. Something like that won't pass easily. Maybe there were 3 kidnapped at the same time, or maybe there was only 1 kidnapped and they couldn't scream because they weren't conscious. Is there anything strange that happened to you last night or all day in general? No, not at all. We were in the club around 5 o'clock and we came back around 8 o'clock. We sat for a while and then we all had dinner together at 10 o'clock and then our day was over. Can I know, what did you have for dinner? Nothing special. Cheese, luncheon, jam, especially the kids. Can I know, what did they eat? They like jam, so they ate jam only. Okay. Is the box still there? Yes, I think so. It's still there. What about you, Adele? Were you with them in the club? He shook his head and said, I spent 7 o'clock with them and I didn't finish my work. I stayed with them for half an hour and then we moved to the house. Did you all come back together? No, Akram and Karam were in my car and Maryam was with her father in his car. That was a unique reaction. Farida came to me while I was moving around the apartment to look around. I looked at them and asked them personally, is there anything wrong with anyone? Especially you, for work or something? No, not at all. I remembered something strange that happened yesterday when we went to sleep. Farida said in a surprising reaction that she stood in her place and I looked at her and Adele and she said the phone rang last night at 11:30 and I hadn't slept yet, and when I answered, I didn't hear anything and I kept saying hello, but I heard someone laughing, so I said someone is reflecting and I turned off the phone and then what? And then the phone rang again all of a sudden, and when I picked up the phone I heard someone saying something in a strange way, so I said, who do you want? He said, Suad. The strange thing is that as soon as she said Suad, she was shocked, as if she started to think, so I asked her, do you know someone called Suad? She looked at me and Adele and then she said, Suad is someone I've known for a while and she comes to me from time to time. She brings me a cup or does something for me to protect the kids and the house, something like that. And as soon as she finished, Adele started to yell at her, Farida. Again, this stupid thing? Who do you think you are? You're the reason for what happened because you're interfering. I tried to calm her down, but he was telling her, I swear to God, if something happens to the kids, don't know what will happen to you. I kept calm, and after he started to calm down, I told her, maybe you can tell me more about Suad, and I told her story. Goodbye. I asked to check the rest of the jar for some reason, and I moved, and I was convinced that 2 people can't solve this case, Samira, their maid, and Madame Suad, and it became clear. And one of the maids agreed with the maid and sold Adele and Farida to a gang to give them money, and 2 days later the family started to receive calls from the kidnappers. But what happened next made me realize that I only have one, but it's melted at first. I knew that my doubts about the food. Samira knew that the kids like to eat jam, and by analyzing the jar it was proven that there was a drug that affected the kids and didn't let them sleep, and the mother and father didn't feel anything. And the call that came from 11.30 came to make sure that no one was at home, and probably there was a call and no one answered. As for Samira, she left the house on the day of the kidnapping to go back to her country and see her mother, but she didn't go back, and her mother was sick and she was the first one to be suspected, and her picture was distributed to the neighbors. And on the other hand, Adel Fahmy was a huge financial reward for giving valuable information about the kids. As for Madame Suad, it was a long story. Farida was one of the clubs. She has a gang of her friends. She likes parties and traveling is also working, no problem, from a very rich family. They have a lot of money, but the most important thing is that she believed in business and magic and everything in its form, and despite their level, but their soul was in the hands of one person. Om Al-Makarim. Om Al-Makarim was a famous woman who almost moved Farida Farhat's family and made them make their decisions and talk to them about it. Of course, Adele refused to have such characters in their life, and Farida did what she said until her brother, her mother, and her father died in a strange accident after their marriage. The same accident made Om Al-Makarim to postpone the wedding for 24 hours, and this made Al-Kaif call his friend who was in the club and announce what she did and tell her. So Farida decided to open her favorite door and see one of them get famous after she felt that her life was not the best, and this was after the accident in which her father, mother, and brother died. And this is how she met Madame Soed, who showed up in the club and told her that she was able to get back 3 gold necklaces. And of course Adele didn't know anything about this and didn't know that she relied and met Rafat and Dajjal, and of course we took her words and couldn't prove anything or put her with Samira in the suspect cell. But the second way was a surprise and shock for me, and I didn't know why, but this came after all the doors started to close more and more, and during the investigations we were able to get a very strange information. We knew it from petrol workers on one of the main roads about the day of the disappearance. So you're saying that you saw the 2 boys and the girl at 3 a.m. with a man and a woman in a car? That's right, my dear, but thank God I didn't say anything because I thought this girl was the most obvious. What do you mean? Did she talk to you? No, dear, I didn't mean that. The 3 children were seen sleeping at 7. When I woke up I saw them in the car, the man and the woman. What did they look like? I swear I couldn't see them well. I mean, the man didn't get out of the car. He was wearing a white shirt and a black coat. His body was close to yours. He had a beard and a mustache. And the woman, I mean, we won't look at harem in the cars that belong to them. I didn't know how to describe them, and I asked him the last question, what are the specifications of this car? And do you have the license plate? A car that has 132 white cars. The owner is from Cairo, but the numbers were wrong. The man who was driving told me that when he saw me he looked at the license plate. He told me that he didn't know anyone in his way until the first traffic light. And what did you do? I told him, didn't you have a number to call him? I swear to God I was late and I found another car, so I didn't pay attention. My guess was that they were Adel Fahmy's children, but there was something inside that told me that he was a stranger, any father and mother, and their 3 children were going on a trip, and I was trying to find a word that could move me, but unfortunately I couldn't. We were watching all the calls about the family, Adele's house and 2 shops, but the strange thing was that a day passed and a week passed and no one talked to them. Other than that, we saw the children in Alexandria once, and once in Bursaid in the Mona Lisa Hotel. And how many calls in this traffic we were moving, but the house didn't repeat the same call that came at 11.30 before the children were kidnapped. And she said a few words, who is with her? And when I asked Farida if she knew how to reach Makarim's mother, Adele looked at her and told me Makarim's mother died 7 years ago. I tried to understand or get any information or something strange that Suad told her, but she said that her words were about her Farida, like she told her, don't let him come back and ruin your present and future, take care. I don't know why I told her something strange. I have a suggestion, but this is not official. Why don't we ask for help from Madame Suad? Maybe she can guide us, she said. Farida and Adele's silence, the silence of Al-Hila's voice, the calmness of the drowned who was forced to calm down instead of dying. And I had no choice but to bring Suad again, but not as a police officer. I went to my father. I saw his father and mother every day in front of him, and they were running after any information that leads them to their children. Their situation was bad, and every day was worse, and it made them feel that they will never see them again. The next day I went to their house in Al-Maidi, and Suad came. It was a strange situation. I won't say that every sheikh has his own way. I will say that every sheikh has a customer who has to give him his goods in a suitable way to sell it. Suad had been doing it for 40 years. She was very chic and comfortable. She had nothing to do with the traditional way of people who read the cup or who do good deeds. No, she was totally different. But when I thought about it, I found that this is the right way to be alone in a way that doesn't attract attention. Her audience was a crowd. She entered and sat in the hall, and there was only me with Farida, and I said to her, we have another call, and she said that you will help me, don't be late. But the important thing is that the leader should understand that I am not a fraud. This is a science, but people don't understand it. I couldn't answer. It doesn't mean that I thought and accepted what is happening to be convinced there are many reasons, and I told her to start. She opened her bag and kept looking for something inside, and then she said we need to enter the children's room, and of course without any explanation we did what she said, closed the door well and the window and the balcony, Suad said, and then she took out a small steamer. She lit the steamer and it smelled very strange, not bad but strange, and she lit a candle and we sat on the floor in front of the children's bed, but before she sat down she turned off the light and kept whispering, and she was whispering with the steamer in her hand. Then she moved between the three beds and she blew the smoke that came out of the steamer towards them, and then we heard 3 knocks. I don't know their source, but it moved. The atmosphere was tense and the fear was obvious, the imagination that could make your brain believe every lie easily, but I wanted to see what would happen on each of the children's beds. There were portraits. Suad came closer and looked at it, and she did the same with the second and the third. Then she turned on the light and said, "Did you hang the 3 children?" Farida was shocked. Adele and I were looking at each other and we didn't understand anything, and she repeated the same question, and then she said, "Didn't I tell you your children are watching? And I made them hang a living picture. I was hanging them while they were sleeping. I was hanging them so they can learn, but they didn't wake up until they slept." Farida, "Where are they?" "They were here," Farida said, "but there was nothing we didn't understand until Adele came in and asked, "What are you talking about? What did you do to the children?" Before he attacked his wife, he was going to hit her. I told him to calm down and let us understand everything one by one. Then I asked Suad, "What is this chain and how did you know that they hang them?" She held my hand and moved towards the bed without hesitation. Adele and Farida moved behind us. When we stood in front of Akram's painting, she pointed at the place of his neck and said the same thing to the second and the third. Suddenly she said, "I'm the only one who drew it for each of the children, and it has nothing to do with us. I graduated from a beautiful art school, and drawing is one of many things I know how to do well." The chains were drawn on their friends using a special energy for each of them to protect them, as I did in reality to dress them. Her style was magical. She said that when God gave you time, he would go after her, and she continued her words. Each chain protected her friend, and they should not be separated except by a certain dimension. As the chains were erased from the painting, they were removed from them in reality. When I asked Farida if they were removed or not, I wanted to know if they were removed here or when they were kidnapped. We then stopped to look at each other without speaking, and then I asked Farida, "Was the painting really drawn with a chain on each of the children's neck?" She shook her head yes, and we were silent. Adele was approaching her, and as soon as he stood in front of her, he hit her with the pain of his strength and flew the ring in her arm. He left the room, and of course I followed him. I talked to Adele after I calmed down a little, and when she left the room behind Farida, she asked for permission to leave. I also stood up to leave, but I found Adele telling me, "I'm going down with you." And this is what I was honestly convinced of. I'm not sure that in such circumstances, as soon as we leave, what can he do to his wife? We went down the stairs, and as soon as we reached the apartment below, Suad stopped in a way that surprised us. She looked at Adele and said to him very firmly, "Can we go in and look here?" She looked at me and looked at him, and without saying a word, she opened the door for her. What was underneath was a work of art. The teacher's works for himself, as they say. Impressions that catch the eye. And Farida was mostly meeting her here outside the club. And Suad too. Suad, who began to move around the place, and she says, "There's someone here. The place is under someone's control." Suad stretched out her hand, and I was still looking at my gun. She turned around, looked at me, and shook her head no. I didn't understand. But she moved until she stood in front of a curtain, and she opened it with both her hands. And we didn't believe what we saw. From behind us and at the door of the apartment, Farida was coming down and standing. And when she saw what we saw, she came in and passed us all, and she says, "How did this come here?" And it was written on the wall in front of us in a strange line, strange words. "Whoever asks for our protection and refuses our words, our curse will fall on him. Mother of the generous." The same words that were written on the wall of the house by my father a long time ago, after they made the accident and he died. Farida, when you told your father, your mother, and your brother on the day of the accident that they had to travel and not wait like Mother Generous told them, the question made us all look at Farida. Farida moved her head and confirmed the words. Why? Farida? Because Mother Generous came to me alone and asked me to do this. This was not Mother Generous. We remained silent and returned to the middle of the garden where we are, the circle between Farida and Saad. And when she finished her last sentence and said, "She was not Mother Generous, Farida," She was your comrade. Farida's 2 legs did not hear her words. She fell to the ground, and Adele was standing in a daze. She felt that what she had seen was a long time more than what she had said. But the time with her was mesmerizing, not like what she had said. Saad's support was Farida, and she comforted her until she sat down. And there was a glass of water next to me, and one of them was bubbling. Saad moved to another place, and when she made sure that no one was with her, she said, Akram, Maram, Karam. Did you choose the names of the children whose letters were taken from their names, Mother Generous? The water stood in front of her, and she looked at me with horror in her eyes. And that was the right answer for me, that I was in front of a woman who was deceived and a believer in all things wrong and infidelity. And she destroyed herself and her house and took away everything she had done. And it was not possible for me to judge her in front of Adele. And she began to believe in things I had never been convinced of. What is this? Saad said to her again, and when she turned to her voice, we found her standing in front of an open accordion door. And as soon as she closed it, we found a sentence from half of China saying, Whoever is born in the past, his grave has been dug, and under it is written Mother Generous. We looked at Saad and Farida to explain to us this sentence, but they did not have anything to say. I took my car and kept turning while I was turning the whole thing in my mind. If I handed over the matter that this was the work of a sorcerer, sorceress, spirits, and so on, why did Samira disappear? Well, why? Why did the children turn green? We tried to reach any side of my brother to show us the way, but Samira was busy, but she was like a salted fish that melted. For a month, there was nothing new in the matter, except that Adele became a man who hated his house, and almost did not enter it, and spent the night between the shops and drinking. He drank and went to the shops, he drank and went to the 2 shops, and Farida was on the edge of madness, and Saad's visits to her increased greatly before she disappeared for a week. Because of all this, a strange surprise happens. Saad commits suicide from the balcony of her apartment after she left a strange answer. Saad lived alone, and the house she lived in was mostly empty except for 2 apartments, and she lived in the 5th apartment, and when she committed suicide, even the owners of these apartments were not present. The strange woman committed suicide from her balcony when Farida was on her way to her after Saad spoke to her and told her that she needed to go to her. And when Farida tried to ask her about the reason, she said to her, Go who? And when Farida arrived there, she found relief and relief. And when she looked and saw the view, she fell from her height. As for the strange answer that Saad left her, it was written in the letter, You will not see your children again, Farida. Do you know why? Because they are the closest to you than anything else. They are always by your side, but you do not care for them or care for them. The covenant between you and me was broken on that day, and as you tasted the pleasure behind me, it was necessary to continue obedience forever. And what is yet to come? Farida, this is the last message, and I will come to you in a year. There will be a prison in your house, and you will not get out of it. And he handed me over to Saad. I am not Saad, Farida. I am Makarim's mother. I was going crazy. Of course, this answer, to explain it to someone, you are a crazy person. But there was no other solution. A well-known person believes in strange things, so when this is the end of it, no one will look for much. People will be surprised at first, but they will forget everything. But if I thought as I started, I will go in a completely wrong way. What does it mean to talk to her and tell her that she has prepared a soul and this soul is Makarim's mother, the Witch of Time? It is true that this preparation process was made after Farida insisted and asked Suad to make a session for her. What does this mean? This witch's soul comes from Farida by mistake. I did not understand anything. During this period, Farida locked herself in her apartment and did not come out. But over time, she began to speak and say that there is someone like her, that Saad comes to her at night to talk to her and disappear. Sometimes she looks like Makarim's mother and says to her, It is too early. It is still 11 o'clock. Sometimes she looks like her and says to her, The children are around you. They see you, but the curse will be solved when you see them and return. When she refused to leave the house and disappear, the situation got worse. Adele continued with her and brought her a doctor. When she suggested that she travel abroad to be treated, the situation got worse to the extent that she was not allowed to travel. Due to her severe fatigue and crisis, She lost almost half of her weight. She looked like a skin on a bone. At the same time, the case was officially closed after a few months of absence of evidence. But on the other hand, Adel was raising the value of the amount he had offered in exchange for any correct information indicating the path of the children. He brought a sheikh to read at home, hoping that what happened was the cause of Farida's illness. The sheikh told them that they had committed a sin. They were not guilty and people were doing this for God without taking anything for themselves. I was thinking about the case even in the midst of all the crimes that had happened to me during this period. I was hoping that something new would happen. Almost a year after his disappearance, we received a strange report. A dead body was found in a farm. Her friends had been traveling for a year and were still on their way back. The victim was a young girl who had been hit on the head with something. There were not many things related to her. She was wearing a small bag with nothing inside. But for me, the case of her disappearance was important. The bag contained 3 gold chains like the ones you saw in the painting on the wall of Adele and Farida's children. Or more precisely, their chains. The note contained small details such as a card, a village address, a phone number, and a third address without a phone number. It was the address of a hotel in Fayum. Next to it was the name of the person, Fathi Farhat. From there, I opened the case of the disappearance of Adel Fahmi's family again because this body belonged to Samira Al-Shagala. A piece of paper and a pen revealed the vision. The 3 were somehow connected. Suad Al-Dagala, Samira Al-Shagala, and Fathi Farhat. This is probably the person who made the gasoline. They drew the game through Samira when she found out that Farida believed in dragons and magic. Suad drew the game for them. Fathi was the bad guy. He was confident in his children and probably sold them to someone because he didn't ask for ransom. Or he was tempted by Adele or Farida to take revenge on them because they didn't know him. He killed Samira at first and said that she ran away. Suad continued the game to lead the case to a misunderstanding. The game of dragons and magic. He killed her when she finished her role and it was clear that it was a suicide. But I stopped at a small detail. How did the door of the apartment on the day of the incident was closed with a curtain from inside? This has only one logical explanation. When Samira went to the club, she came back to the house when it was empty. She hid in her room and waited for someone to sleep. She opened the curtain and the door and went back to her room until the next morning. Probably, when she found out what happened, she hid in the closet. This explains why her clothes were thrown inside as if she was hiding someone under it. When she found out that the children weren't there and opened the door, she went out and hid on the floor and then she ran away. Here, the mother's words and the father's words confirm that the door was closed from inside. This is the solution. There is only one thing left. I reached Fathi. It was a surprise that Farida's brother who died in the incident was called Fathi. Fathi Farhat. Before the incident, Fathi had to deal with drugs. No one knew where he was. Everyone dealt with the 3 bodies that were in the incident and figured out that the father and mother were Fathi. The reason for the trip was that they wanted someone to escape out of the country. We tried to reach Fathi, but there was nothing about him. As soon as Farida saw the gold chains, she got up and left. She wasn't the Farida I met the first time. Adele brought her a nurse because she was almost crazy. She got up and left, but her condition didn't get better. Instead, she said last year the children came back. They were generous. God bless you. She kept hesitating. Adele and the nurse couldn't help him. This was the first time Adele lost hope that his children would come back. Despite this, he kept looking for them. After a while, the case was closed forever. We didn't reach the children or know what happened to them. But after 20 years, I got the strangest call in my life. It came from a man whose voice was sick and helpless. Yes, who is it? Who is with me? I want to know where Adele Fahm's children are. I didn't get the question, so he continued and told me I'm in the hospital. I'm here to visit Fathi. Fathi Farhat. He hung up. When I called again, his phone was off. I was there for an hour. I reached him. I couldn't forget this name. It was the only case in my life from the day I started until I left the service, which was supported by a stranger. I knew from the nurse who didn't talk to me much that he had cancer at a late stage. I went to him. He was an old man lying on his bed weighing less than 50 kilos. I approached him and sat down. It's okay. You've been through a lot in the past and now. I couldn't say anything. Someone died and decided to tell me his last confession. I said, listen, you were very close and everything you thought was right. But you missed a small thing and that's why I planned this detail. It's okay, Mr. Lawa. Tell me what happened. The execution was planned by me, Samira and Suad. One person believes in witchcraft and magic. From there, I gave money to Suad. As for Samira, she was rich. I promised her a dowry after taking the kids with us and living far away. She agreed to do it without thinking. But in front of the police, they took her blood and ran away a day before she disappeared. So she's the one who took the kids with her. But she went back to the apartment after she went down with them to the club the day before the incident. She took the kids with her at 2 p.m. I kept quiet after I explained Samira's relationship with the incident. I was waiting for him to continue and he did. Everything written on the walls was written by Suad. Suad wrote it herself when she took a copy from the apartment's key. The answer was that it's about the magic and the souls, and that there's a spirit that prepared a unique evidence for what he did. After that, I threw her out of the balcony. Her turn was over and it was obvious that she committed suicide. I was watching him. He couldn't move or breathe. I was shocked. This devil talks about his crime, his power and his intelligence in more than one moment. I won his house. I held her hand and continued. That's right. You also killed Samira when we took the kids. Were you afraid of her? He shook his head and told me to be patient. I continued. She was the one who knew the details of the whole thing from the beginning and that she was at home until the end. If she fell in a hurry or ran away, everything is over. Samira's body was supposed to appear at any time to be alert. Is this a crime or magic? Who's going to celebrate? I was happy. What about the kids? Where did you take them? I killed all 3 of them on the same day. I buried them in a place where no one could reach. I couldn't believe what I heard. You mean the kids were killed, but I was shocked by what he said. By the way, Samira, a lot of what you told me was true. It's time for you to solve the case. What did I tell you? Did I tell you that we met before? You still don't know me. Look at me carefully and you will remember me. Get rid of the disability and the disease that change people. I looked at him and I didn't know who he was. He told me, open your joys. Farida. He died with his parents a long time ago. I'm Adel Fahmy. I stood where I was looking and I couldn't speak. I ran to the nurse named Mariam. Is this Adel Fahmy? Yes, sir. I held her hand and she screamed. She told me to open my joys. The girl screamed and she told me, Adele told me to tell you because you won't know him after his disability changed. I left her and went back to him. He was trying to breathe. He told me, what do you do when you discover that the most important thing in your life is not yours, when you know that your 3 children are not yours? I stood and waited on the chair and I sat down and he told me I was tired and I was hiding. I went out and I found out that I can't go back nor after that nor from the beginning. I was born with a problem that prevents me from going back. I went crazy. I did the analysis 10 times and all the results were the same. I was in tears, but all that came to my mind was that Farida had to burn her heart in front of me, and if I told her what happened she would get angry, and my view in the market and the family and among people, how would she react? So the solution was to get rid of the kids. Samira waited in an old car that she bought a while ago and he took the kids out after they were all green and Farida was green too, and he didn't eat anything at dinner, and he put the kids in the car and moved with them and breathed everything and went back to the house at about 7 o'clock in the morning. He opened and closed the door with the door handle and went to sleep next to Farida. I was betting on her garden. Losing children like this for her is a death that you will wish for and will not give her, and she will go crazy in front of you. I lived with her just to see her garden in front of me, and I told her, by the way, I told her that I was the one who killed the children, but she is in another kingdom. I told her that she is our sister. I told her everything, and I told her that you are also everything right now. Don't bother me. I love you. And the machine started to whine and the patient came running and they sent for the doctor and they took me out, and that night they announced the death of Adel Fahmy. I didn't believe this truth, even though it is the truth, and there is no case to be opened again. There is no new evidence, and the children were not dead or anything. All the parties even died. The children, Samira, Suad and Farida after she went crazy, and now Adel Fahmy, the criminal who was in front of me all the time, and I couldn't stop thinking, a shock after another shock, and all that came to my mind was to go to my old friend and tell him everything that happened, and I went. to the journalist and the writer Shaker Abbas, and I told him what happened in the end, and he is the one who wrote the most about this incident at that time, because what happened was that a dear friend like Omar Zaidan might not have believed, but as Omar said, he didn't believe the truth even though it was the truth. And with this word, my father closed the first radio episode he had written from his series that I still don't know where it will take me, the series of Olivert James writings, which I decided to call a journalistic archive. And this is where the episode ends. Didn't I tell you, the one who doesn't want to be blind and focus? How many people are blind, like Mauden, please? How many people are blind? Not many, of course. The number is in the limelight, including me, of course. I don't want to exaggerate myself, but I myself was deceived and I was very blind, honestly, James. We are waiting for the second episode of the series, and we are waiting for the series of Olivert James writings. I thank Olivert James very much for his writing for this episode, and I thank you for being here, and I hope you write to us in the comments whether we continue the series of Olivert James writings or not, and I am sure that we will agree because I am the first one who supports the idea. That's it. I hope you like the episode 1. Hope you like it. Like it and share it. Subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed, and activate the bell button to receive all new. Join the amazing family group. I thank you very much for listening, and I hope we don't forget our brothers in prayer in all places where Muslims and non-Muslims are oppressed, in Palestine, Lebanon, Sudan, Syria, and in all the places that we mentioned, and that we should remember. See you in the next episode, and good night.